Thank you for joining us for this episode of CES Tech Talk. I'm your host, Jeff Joseph, and today we have an excellent podcast lined up for you all around sports technology. First, we're going to be talking to the ever-impressive founders of Boston-based Sports Innovation Lab, Angela Ruggiero, Joshua Walker, and Isaiah Kazavinsky. Next, we're lucky enough to have Steve Scabello, VP of Licensing and Business Development from the NFL Players Association, joining us to discuss the trends he sees in this area. Enjoy, and thanks for listening. This week's CES Tech Talk is brought to you by GraceNote Sports. GraceNote Sports captures, curates, and delivers in-depth sports data, including live scores, statistics, and play-by-play details for the world's top leagues, teams, and events. GraceNote is now a Nielsen company. Hello and welcome to CES Tech Talk. I'm Jeff Joseph. I'm the Senior Vice President of Communications with the Consumer Technology Association. We are the producer of CES, the world's gathering place for all who are engaged in technology. It's just right around the corner as we sit here in fall. Coming up in January will be CES 2018. You can find all the information you need on CES at ces.tech. And one of the exciting trends that we expect to see and talk about at CES 2018 is the integration or the intersection of sports and technology. We're at the beginning of an unbelievably exciting new era in sports. Technology is rapidly changing all aspects of athletics for athletes and fans alike. Advancements in technology, driven in part by low-cost sensors and comprehensive data analytics, is allowing for more personalized and targeted training, performance, and recovery for athletes at all levels, while also enhancing their safety. Tech advancements are also improving the viewing experience for spectators watching the game live or at home. From fitness bands and other wearables to smart soccer and basketballs, to beacons and integrated technologies at stadiums and arenas. This isn't your father's sports experience. And we can learn a lot of lessons, I think, from the integration of sports and technology that can apply to startups and to entrepreneurs. And as we look at smart arenas and the use of technology in stadiums, how that may apply to smart cities and beyond. So who better to discuss this brave new integration of tech and sports than former professional and world-class athletes? I'm so excited to welcome today to our podcast Isaiah Kazavinsky, the former linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. He was a three-time first-team All-Ivy player at Harvard. Boo! I'm a Princeton guy. He was also a first-team All-American. He graduated cum laude with a pre-med degree and later returned to Harvard to receive his MBA. For those of you who are football fans, as we're here in the early part of the NFL season, you may also know his name because he was the first former NFL player who agreed to donate his brain upon his death for study of the effects of concussions on the human brain. Has been understandably and appropriately lauded for that. Also joining us is Angela Ruggiero. Angela is another slacker. She's a four-time Olympian in ice hockey. She won a gold in 1998 while medaling in 4 consecutive Olympics. In her career, she was named as the best player in the NCAA in the world by Hockey News, and she's only the 4th woman and 2nd American woman to be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. That's unbelievable. She's also a graduate of Harvard and Harvard Business School, as is Isaiah, and double boo there again. And she's an author and also a former contestant on The Apprentice, which is kind of fun. And then the final slacker we have is Josh Walker. Josh is a former VP of Research at Forrester and entrepreneur in residence at General Catalyst. Over his career, Josh has successfully launched and grown several venture-backed software and data businesses. Together, the three are co-founders and managing directors of the Sports Innovation Lab. SIL is a market research and advisory firm focused on the intersection of sports and innovation, with a focus on identifying trends and evaluating technology products and services that will drive the future of sport. So with that, let's jump right in. And why don't you guys start by tell us a little about the lab. What drove you to start it, and what's the long-term goal?
Yeah, no, it's great to be joining you today, Jeff, and really excited and honored to be on the show. I think there's a couple of different points here that I'd love that Angela and Josh weigh in as well, but the really continuing to see a world of sports technology defined broadly, really fragmented space where there's companies popping up everywhere. And really, there was no one else out there that was actually going to go and organize the space. And seeing large companies, large organizations, we all kind of came from 3 different aspects around seeing those large decisions made, those kind of big, large company decisions, the build buy decisions, the partnership decisions, the investment decisions, being able to seeing those decisions being made with limited information.
We really felt there was an opportunity in the market, as Isaiah mentioned, to help these big decision makers. And, I'm on the executive board of the International Olympic Committee, on the board of the U.S. Olympic Committee. I've kind of spent a lot of time with global sports organizations and really looked at the decision-making process and looked at how, technology is fundamentally changing that industry. And yet there was really no one in the market that could, from a third-party objective way, help these decision makers and help these large organizations, make the right purchasing decisions, create the right partnerships. The list goes on. So it's really exciting for us, I think, to see that we all come from sports. We love technology, different backgrounds, but really saw the same fundamental sort of problem in the market, and we're really trying to help address that.
What are some of those trends that you found in the research? What's really sort of starting to cement and take place in the sports marketplace?
There's really a very interesting way of looking at that, and that's really by looking at the amount of companies that are out there trying to solve problems. So we started to identify trends by looking at actually where there were the most companies and capital being applied to solving big problems. And when those things start to cluster, you see really 5 trends emerge. So one of the major trends that we're focused on this year is the quantified athlete. And you mentioned this in your setup, Jeff. It's really the wearables. It's a lot of the software and data that allows you to figure out what's happening on the athlete, about the athlete. It's really that human performance story, right?
Right. Well, I want to come back to that, but I was intrigued by the sense of the quantified athlete, and I've been reading a lot and certainly wearing a wearable myself of our ability to get those analytics and gather so much data.
No, Jeff, I mean, you raised something that is front of mind for obviously a lot of the large sports leagues and organizations, federations globally, and that should be something where Angela and I talk about this all the time, where our body was a business when we played. Mm-hmm. And really, I wanted to do everything. We wanted to be quantified athletes, but we lacked a lot of the technology. Angela actually was able to experience some of the technology, but being able to take the guesswork of how we train so that we could perform better and feel our best come game day.
I think what he's talking about is change of behavior as these companies come to market, and especially young millennials are using data and sharing data, and the technology gets further along to help not just elite athletes, but human population. More high quality data will be available, and so from a performance perspective, yes, absolutely. I think athletes are going to continue to use, and teams are going to want more information, the right information. Right,
absolutely. And as many of our listeners, I'm sure, are also like me, fantasy sports enthusiasts, to have access to that data, it's going to be really fun. Make it all the more engaging. What in that area of analytics and data collection and monitoring, you guys get to see? You mentioned all these companies that you get to see.
What you're going to see with the next wave, we believe, is really a focus on the software side of things. So we just finished an evaluation here where we brought a number of companies through the lab where we actually looked at where this data comes together, Jeff, like how you can analyze it, right? And that's more of a software challenge than it is actually a hardware one.
Yeah.
But just to add to that as well, and this is kind of that amazing kind of relationship between hardware and software, especially on the human performance side. There is no doubt the better the hardware innovations become, the better the data quality becomes to then tell an even more accurate story outside of that controlled setting. So There is this deep relationship that we talk about on kind of the quality of raw data, and then what Josh speaks to as well, which is the aggregation and analysis of the aggregations of multiple data streams.
Right.
When all those get better, you really start to tell this human performance story that is not just limited to elite athletes. Now that's a testing ground, but that's really, in the end, we all want to feel our best, and the aggregation analysis being built out in other industries is really going to be dialed in that quantified self space.
And it's analogous to, as someone mentioned earlier, the innovations in the healthcare space overall, and the challenge of collecting all those data sets and doing real time analysis and allowing the different systems to speak to each other so you can get better information.
Absolutely.
That's really fun. That's really fascinating. You reference we just talked about how these developments are mirroring or maybe even driving adoption in other areas, and you guys have written a lot about business as sports and looking at some of the innovations that you're seeing come along in the broad sports field and how they may apply to other markets, some other technology areas. Can you explain the comparison about business and sports and your line that playing offense versus defense is critical for business, and maybe also we can dive a little bit into those trends that you're seeing on the sports side and what they may mean for or how they may inform us as we look at other areas of technology and other markets. That's a broad question.
Yeah, it's a pretty broad one, but we're actually taking a global and very broad perspective of the market, so it fits pretty nicely. I mean, we are looking at immersive media as a massive trend here, and that touches a number of things that are really important to CES attendees and exhibitors, which is the augmented reality, virtual reality, the enhancements in the actual television displays. That all is actually happening both in the venue, right, where there's now augmented reality jumbotrons that are coming out. There's fan-created media that will come from handhelds. There's autonomous cameras that are being put on the side of a field or a court. So there's a lot of great technology that's going to make its way into really changing the way the linear broadcast of sports occurs. So immersive media is a massive trend for us. And the other area that we didn't touch on yet is next generation sponsorship. And that's really where, for the last, several decades, sponsorship in sports has meant naming rights. It's meant showing up at a venue with a street team and handing out samples of product. Technology now has made its way into that area where agencies and brands are really looking at how do they activate their sponsorship before an event, during the event, and after the event. And that timeline and the ability to leverage digital platforms to do that is really, really compelling to a number of very large brands that spend millions and millions of dollars every year.
The always outspoken, always intriguing Dallas Mavs owner Mark Cuban said last summer that he finds analytics to be one of the most overrated technology in sports, and AI is the most underrated. Do you agree? Are you finding that in your research, and how is AI being integrated into sports technology?
Yeah, I mean that's a really tough question because AI has so many different uses. So I think Mark Cuban was right in the term, in terms of thinking about analytics that way. I mean, analytics also means many different things, and I think for the people that view analytics as Moneyball, they miss so many different other aspects of sort of how data is being applied to the business of sport. Artificial intelligence, I mean, it just has so many different potential use cases. You could use it, of course, to, be a predictive technology. You could use it to help with player health. It could run the gamut of opportunities.
Let me close with a couple of final questions. One, so you guys get to see this entire landscape. You get to see all these trends, all this disruption, all this cool innovation. As you look back now on your career as elite athletes, what are the technologies that you wish that you had that would have made you a better athlete or more informed, or be able to negotiate better contracts?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time here, and I think we could probably make this an hour-long podcast just on this topic alone. But I'll speak. Angela's got just an awesome perspective on that, just having been on almost every single side with her role at the IOC, as well as being a four-time Olympian around that as well. But I know one of the common things that Angela and I, after having known each other for 20 years, having known and have access to more information. I was a constant overtrainer. I'll give very specific examples. I was a constant overtrainer, overworked all the time. But it's because I didn't know I had one kind of way to do things, and I was just trying to outwork everybody, and that was my goal. But little did I know I was shooting myself in the foot. I was overtraining like crazy, and that led to a lot of injuries, overuse injuries, etc. over time. Not that it's only attributed to that, but that's one of those things where there's a ton of guesswork in how we all train and want to feel good. And if there's a question, put more work in, put more work in, put more work in. And the ideal is to actually develop a way in order to create events with and around the human body that don't treat the body like a wandering path of the stock market. And I always say this, but really the body is reproducible in events, and try to put yourself in the best position, probability wise, of feeling your best. And you can go down the line from hydration to injury, from recovery from injury. And I've had 11 surgeries on my body. The ability to take guesswork out of that recovery and injury rehabilitation. Literally, the world is kind of an oyster of things I would have had and wish I could have had. Angela, I'll hand out to you to kind of add to that.
Yeah, I mean, just Isaiah pointed out, taking the guesswork out of sleep, hydration, recovery, player load, heart. I mean, all the things you can quantify now, all the things you can measure with these wearables or different devices that are obviously, flush in the market. And, the 10,000 hours is something, I'm sure everyone's heard to become an elite athlete or really elite anything. I think you could get that down to 5,000 with the right amount of information and, the right input to know, look, how do I course correct in real time versus trial by error, which is what Isaiah and I really had to do when we were competing. So I think today's athlete is set up for success if they really, take advantage of technology, use it, and have people around them that really can interpret it before we get to the point where AI and machine learning will actually give you that predictive analytics. So it's an exciting time for sports, and for not only for the athletes, but for the fans who will then get to see the level of performance continue to increase.
Very last question, short responses. What sports tech trends do you expect to see at CES 2018?
Oh, that's an easy answer because we'll be there,
right?
And we'll be talking about everything we discussed on the phone today. So
outstanding.
There's a couple other ones that are extensions. Is precision nutrition. That's one of the nice little trends that I'd like to kind of highlight, which is really an extension of precision medicine. But we've got more in the back pocket that is going to be really, really fun.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing you at CES coming up in January. I want to thank Isaiah, Angela, and Josh for joining us today on CES Tech Talk about sports and technology. So much more we could dive into. Come to CES if you're interested in this topic. If you're interested in technology, come to CES. Visit the Sports Innovation Lab online to learn more about their great research, and visit ces.tech to learn more about CES and all the conference sessions and programming and exhibits that we'll have around sports and technology at the upcoming show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsor. This week's CES Talk is brought to you by Grace Notes Sports. The new Grace Notes TV sports data offering lets pay TV operators, OTT services, and smart device makers tap into Grace Notes live scores, statistics, and play-by-play data for the world's top leagues and events, including the Winter Games and 2018 FIFA World Cup. Whether audiences are watching in the living room or on the go, Grace Note TV sports data keeps them tuned in and engaged. Grace Note is now a Nielsen company. And one of the things that we've been discussing and what we're very excited about to see at CES 2018 is the intersection of technology and sports. As we continue our conversations on sports tech, it's about so much more than fitness bands. Technology innovations have really expanded athletes, their training, their performance, monitoring their health. It's expanded and revolutionized the fan experience both in stadiums and at arenas and at home. And increasingly, we're seeing the entire sort of sports ecosystem engaged in leveraging tech. The NFLPA, the National Football League Players Association, has really been at the forefront of leveraging tech to help their athletes from development to protecting their health and even to identifying new revenue and growth and career opportunities. With me today is Steve Skebelo, who is the Vice President of Licensing and Business Development with NFLPA. He has extensive experience in sports licensing and marketing. He's stints with the NBA, with Major League Baseball, and the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games. So, Steve, thanks for joining me here today.
Thanks, Jeff.
We appreciate it. And I should note that the NFLPA has been an active participant and a partner at CES the last 2 years.
That's right.
And just talk, before we get into the depths of the intersection of sports and tech and how you're dealing with that, can you talk a little bit about your experience and what you've been doing at CES and how you're working with your athletes and using it as an opportunity?
Sure. What's most important for us, I think one of the most important things for us to be able to communicate as the NFLPA is that we are player-driven and player-led. So anything that we've been doing at CES has really come from the players, at the behest of the players. Yeah. When they come to us, when we have a meeting with our, say, board of player representatives, the players who are invested in the business of the union, when they come to us and they ask, what can be done to set more of a solid foundation in the world of technology, that's when we, look at CES as really a great opportunity for us to expand those opportunities for players. Mm-hmm. But I think that's really critical, is that we're not doing this in and of ourselves and pulling players along. We have players who are interested in attending and have been attending on their own, say, is there something more that the organization can do on behalf of other players to kind of set a platform to lead the way and help to open more doors, by building those relationships.
And we've seen, like, I'm a sports fan, I'm an NFL fan, I'm a Cowboys fan, I admit it. And I'm proud to say that. As I've walked around the show floor, I've often seen athletes from all the major leagues who are there. And I guess I've always wondered, I suspect it's one part they're like everybody else, they're fans of technology. Yeah. But what other opportunities are they seeking when they come?
Certainly, athletes are looking at, potential investment opportunities. Athletes want to take just a much more active role these days in how they invest their dollars. They want to be more informed, and they want to share in some of that upside growth potential that startups in technology represent. And the CES just represents that great opportunity for them to be there on the show floor, to see the technologies firsthand. It's one thing to read about it, to see an online video about it, but actually be there to meet the founders, to meet the people behind the technological developments is really key for them. And as I said, that's just something where they had been, some of them who are really focused on that, either from an investment standpoint or from a learning about technology standpoint, or even just from an employment standpoint. Players start to think about what's next. After playing days are over. Average length of career for an NFL player is a little over 3 years. So it's not that long of an arc from the time that you enter the league as a rookie till your playing days might be done, and you're thinking about what can I do next. If you're interested in technology, again, CES just creates a really unique platform to see kind of what that means. What types of job opportunities are there in technology? Be it from coding to sales and marketing to any of the other opportunities that are represented there.
I appreciate that nice pitch for CES. Thank
it's totally organic, again, from the players. Right. That what was interesting for us last year, that was really the biggest presence that the NFLPA had at CES yet. And we reached out to all of our players. It's an interesting time of year because in the lead up to, a lot of players are just so focused on trying to make the playoffs, right? Trying to get to the postseason, and CES is happening in January. So we have a lot of players who are just focused on, I'm not going to be able to go because I'm going to be on the field in the playoffs. And then when that reality doesn't happen, for them to be reaching out to us and saying, hey, I might be going to CES now, I'm not going to be in the playoffs. We were able to finally last year be able to proactively reach out to a lot of players, talk about what we'd be doing at the show. And even with that outreach, and even with having players, say, yeah, I'm interested in, either going to the event that you're hosting or seeing you on the floor, joining in some of the meetings that you're having, we still were running into players on the floor that, and some of it was just through their social media. Hey, I'm at CES. Great. Then we, direct message them and say, hey, did you know that the NFLPA has all of this set up?
Right.
So it was just great to be able to see that and see the interest on the part of the players in being part of that.
That's fantastic, and thank you for doing that. It adds to the excitement of the show floor, I think, for technology fans who are often football fans to see them around as well. And we sort of jumped right in. We should, before we dig even deeper, take a step back and can you just talk to our audience a little bit about what you do and what your role is?
Sure. So I oversee licensing and business development. Licensing is really a lot of the core products that people see and recognize with NFL player intellectual property involved. So you've got EA with Madden, Fanatics, Nike, Panini with trading cards. Those are just a lot of the bread and butter products that generate a lot of the revenue for NFL Players Inc. The biz dev part is where CES comes in, and just some of the other new initiatives that we're driving. It's how do we drive exponential growth for our business on behalf of players? I think incrementally we've been able to continue to build a lot of those core categories, which has been great. But biz dev gives us the opportunity to be a little bit more creative, to take on new roles, new initiatives, and find new opportunities for players as well. So we're always looking to grow that foundation for our players. The business of NFL Players Inc. We're on a trajectory. We have a goal of exceeding $200 million by 2020, and we're on that path. But we do need to engage in those non-traditional, unique endeavors to really push us over that, and that's what I think CES helps open up.
So
for
it's
us.
a real business.
Yeah,
that's amazing. We're speaking to you from a conference room at NFLPA headquarters here in Washington, and if you're a fan like me, it's heaven. There are marketing. It's
a good place to work.
It's a good place to work. There are jerseys, there are bobbleheads, there are fat heads all over the walls. You know where you are when you come to NFLPA headquarters. Well, so how long have you been engaged in sort of this intersection of tech and sports as the players union, and what's the long-term goal?
In terms of how long we've been involved, we've had that initial presence with CES the last couple of years. Not even a year ago, December of 2016, we launched an accelerator, an athlete-driven accelerator called the One Team Collective. What that did was open up an opportunity for us to work with startups, early-stage companies that don't really fit into our traditional licensing model. These are companies that, because they're run by founders and have small staffs, they don't have the resources or the infrastructure, the investment available to put up, minimum guarantees or, some of the things that we would look for, marketing commitment dollars, the way a traditional licensee might be able to do. And we felt like we were missing out on opportunities. There's so much happening in that space right now, whether it's wearables or augmented reality or ways that technology is impacting the experience that either fans have with players or that players are having themselves in preparing for games. So much new technology that's coming into the market on a daily basis that if we didn't change our model or try to introduce a new model, we would just continue to miss out on the opportunity to engage with those companies. So we started this accelerator called the One Team Collective. We have 7 other founding partners, including Kleiner Perkins, Madrona, BlackRock, Intel Capital, who could choose to invest in some of the companies that we might work with. Sports Innovation Lab and Harvard Innovation Lab, who do some of the research and put us in the educational space. So we're seeing these companies as they come onto the stage. And then Lead Dog is a company that works on the marketing of those startup companies. Again, can opt to for any companies that come into the One Team Collective portfolio. What the NFLPA brings to that is some of the traditional rights, the intellectual property of a group license, so the ability to feature players' names, likenesses, numbers, et cetera, in their product, or the opportunity to have players be endorsers or player engagements. Because a lot of the times with these new companies, they're focused on launching their product. They're focused on just making sure that it works, that it gets out there, that there's a market for it. Exactly. And a lot of them can benefit from having engagement or input from athletes, if they're specifically in that space. Like think about the space of wearables, who better to be a user and an endorser of your product than a professional athlete. Right. So we knew that there was value that we represented, but it's value that might not have been at the forefront of the minds of these companies. So we created the One Team Collective so that we could be out there and have this collective offer to some of these startups, ones that we thought there was a potential good fit with, and then have some of those other founding partners that I mentioned evaluate the opportunities and see if it's something that they wanted to be engaged with too.
Mm-hmm. You can bring your expertise from a sports marketing and licensing perspective and evaluate those opportunities. Can you walk me through the process a little bit? How do you identify these companies to go in the accelerator, and are they coming from the investor side primarily? Are you actively out there seeking, or maybe the reverse question is how do companies find you?
No, that's great. It really comes both ways. Definitely, the investment community is pushing some leads our way. We try to be forefront in engaging with events and marketing the One Team Collective so that founders know that there is this vehicle that if they're potentially interested in having that athlete engagement, they can get to it through us. So we just came off 2 events in the fall, one of which put the One Team Collective in front of a tech competition in London, and another one that was based out in Seattle. totally diverse audiences that we were in front of, but really at the end of the day, it was about these startup companies that we thought could potentially be a good fit for us. So that helps us to generate the leads, to keep the One Team Collective out there. We have regular board meetings with those founding partners where, again, we review what we call our hot list, companies that have applied, who, we think have a better potential fit than most. We've had in that time frame since we launched, we've had over 300 companies apply. We have 3 that we've identified and have formed partnerships with. And the good thing about this accelerator is that it's not time bound. It will remain open. We'll continue to solicit leads for as long as there are companies developing interesting technologies that could be a good fit for athletes. We will continue to take those applications.
And just for those startups out there who may be interested, how do they apply?
They apply. It's oneteamcollective.com. It's as simple as that. The application is right there online. There's an explainer video that goes a little bit more about it, repeats who those founding partners are. But they apply there. We commit to responding one way or another within 30 days. And then if that response is, hey, we'd like a little bit more information, then we do a little bit deeper dive right there.
And what are you looking for when you review these applications from an NFLPA perspective? What stands out to you?
Sometimes it's the first thing that we look at is, how do you want to work with the athletes, right? Because there's a lot of cool products out there, some really fascinating technologies, but we want to make sure that they understand the why of what we do and how the athletes can actually add to their model. So that's one of the critical questions that's on that questionnaire is, how would you envision working with NFL players? So that's really a key differentiator. And then looking at is there something different about the applicant's model? Sometimes if somebody, for instance, looks at developing a product, but rather than trying to take it all the way through to market, their end game is to license it to a third party who's already in the market. That can make it interesting. It's all in what is the path to success, and we try to look at what's the differentiator. As I said, we do rely on our founding partners too. If there's a company that's in one of their venture labs that again has a good business model, has a really clear understanding of how players can help take their business to that next step, then we'll evaluate all of that equally.
But they can bring more of that sort of traditional business analysis and path to market, et cetera, while you guys look very specifically. You've had a couple of successes thus far.
Yeah, well, successes just in terms of we've had companies matriculate through the process and become portfolio companies. I think the ultimate definition of success is still to be determined. Right? They're early stage, but yes. Company out of Boston by the name of Whoop was the first company that joined the One Team Collective. We signed a relationship with them. Whoop does a wearable that tracks sleep, recovery, it's something that, again, from an athlete standpoint, really helps you to assess like where you are on a day-to-day basis in terms of how much of a load you can put out, how much of a workload, how much stress you can take, and how much sleep you need so that your body properly recovers and you're ready for the next day's workout. So what was really interesting to us is that product itself. Sports Innovation Lab, Harvard Innovation Lab. The Whoop actually started at Harvard Innovation Lab. Sports Innovation Lab had done a lot of the research up front, so there was a lot of checks and balances up front. And then what was interesting to us was the ability to have a Whoop strap actually on every NFL player. So we're in the process, throughout the 2017 season of rolling that out, and then it'll be very interesting to once the straps are deployed, to start to look at some of the data that's captured by the players, see if there's any trends, anything that we can evaluate from there. So we're in that early stage where it's like we signed the agreement, we have got to get the straps out to players, we have to have the players engaged and involved. What's been encouraging is that we've started to have players from some teams reach out to us and say, can we accelerate the process of getting these out? We've got one team that reached out and said, we want to get the entire team outfitted right now. That could open up a model for us to do that with all 32 clubs as well. So it's something that we believe is going to empower the players, both in their workouts, what they do to recover both from games and practices, off-season training, and also will create a really interesting database that the players own and that the players can control.
And that's a key piece of that agreement, that it's actually owned by the players, not owned by the league or the owners.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, any of that personal data, that's something that's the essence of the athlete, right? That's what they're putting out there. So that's something that they should be able to own and control. And certainly, if a player is interested in it, but only from a personal standpoint and doesn't, want anything done with that data, that's something that they can control.
They can have that right as well. Another, I'll use this big word of success, but another investment has been StatMuse.
Yeah. StatMuse, really, really compelling company. So StatMuse is in the natural language recognition space, and again, it was something that was actually brought to us by one of the players on the One Team Collective Athlete Advisory Board, Russell Okung. So Russell was one also that was out there. He was one of the voices that was saying, you need to get involved with CES, and help bring us along. Russell had met with StatMuse, looked at the technology. We thought it was incredibly cool. So think about this: if you do a simple online search of who threw the most touchdown passes, in an NFL career, you can get the black and white data spit back pretty quickly. It's a commodity, right? It's not a real engaging user experience. If you can, fire up your Amazon Echo, and you ask Alexa, which quarterback threw the most touchdowns, and instead of Alexa answering, if Peyton Manning answering and saying, "It is me," I threw the most touchdowns. Here's how many I threw. That's what StatMuse allows us to do, both through their app, through engagements with the Alexa. It personalizes that experience, and that's what I think is really interesting from twofold, from a fan perspective, but also from a player engagement perspective. So from the fan standpoint, you've taken that commoditized experience and you've made it one-to-one with the player. Right. Now you're essentially talking, to that player, having a conversation. You can ask, more questions. StatMuse has done sessions with a number of current and former players, and then that number will continue to grow so that you can have that personal experience. And from a player standpoint, it's like a great opportunity for them to be in that space now, right? To understand what that voice recognition opportunity looks like.
And we've talked about a couple areas of real opportunity. Talked about voice, which is very cool. I love the AR VR. As we look ahead to CES 2018, what are you going to be looking for, if you can be specific, or even more broadly in terms of technology trends that you really think provide opportunities?
I don't know if it's anything specific that I haven't mentioned. I think we do want to look more in wearables, and what's the next evolution, in that space. Anything to do with data, data repositories and opportunities for us to help the players to collect that data that helps them to perform better and train better and just get better at what they do. The fan engagement, again, just thinking about those evolutions in technology of, are there new tools that help bring fans and players closer, in a positive environment, in ways for, whether it's training, helping other people see, even think about how could you turn an injury around into a positive, here's how I'm recovering, and think about it, if you're a youth player in a sport and it's like, I have that same injury, let me see how, my favorite athlete came back from that, what training did they do, how much sleep did they need, to see more of those tools, and at the end of the day, when we're there, we're going to be looking for, what's the buzz, what's the trend, what's something that might not be self-evident as potentially being of interest to NFL players, but we could see the fit, and being able to identify what are those new products, new technologies where that could be of interest, and maybe they don't even realize that having that connection to NFL players could help boost it to the next level.
Sure. Yeah, we only have a few minutes left, but you hit on something that I'm curious about. We talked a little about injury and recovery. Is that an area that you're looking at through the collective? Are you getting submissions that help with identification, with recovery? Of course, concussion's a big issue at every level of sports today. Are those areas that you're exploring and excited about?
There's definitely companies applying. There's companies that it takes it to another level of testing, where you've got to be comfortable that the product is actually doing what it says it will do. But yeah, I mean, even if you just look at Whoop, and what it can measure in terms of recovery, I mean, that at its very base level is really critical for athletes to have that understanding.
Injury prevention in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're understanding, what you should be taking on in a given day. So yeah, I think that we're definitely seeing the applications. Just anything that's health, safety related, we're going to put through like an even more intense round of review just to see if the product is actually doing what it says it will do. That's where some, a company like Sports Innovation Labs involvement gets in, because then we can really dig into the research and have more of that information available before we would decide to whether it takes to take it to the next step.
And is the collective specifically focused only on those technologies that are of benefit to athletes, broadly defined, or are you also looking at some of those fan engagement technologies that we've talked about? Yeah. Can you just talk briefly about sort of the trends you're seeing there?
In terms of fan engagement, I mean, I'd bring it back to just media. The way the media landscape is continuing to change, and that people can have their voice inserted, and the way media can be shared. I don't think anybody knows exactly what that landscape is going to look like, even in the near future. But looking at the technologies that will make that more shareable, again, anything that enhances that fan to player connection, makes it more real, makes it more engaging. Just anything in that space, I think, is something that we're going to want to be looking at. But I think the changing landscape of media is definitely something that we want to keep very close attention on. Because if you look at, again, we've got 2,000 players in the NFLPA. Each one of them now, through their existing social media, has their own network, so to speak. So think about all of those. It's not about broadcasting anymore. It's about how do you reach to make those, enhance those one-to-one connections. And I just think there will be technologies that make it that much easier and better and more natural for that fan player connection.
I want a tech that makes me as athletic, as skillful, as graceful as Des Bryant. Have you seen that come through? Is anything coming through that's going to help me with that?
Amazing. We'd all like to be like Des. No,
not too
I
early.
Don't see that on the horizon.
A replicate? I have a replicate at least or something?
Those are the technologies that scare us.
Oh, man. Well, we talk about job loss. We see robotics coming on the field anytime soon. Well, thanks, Steve. I really appreciate your being with us today on CES Tech Talk. It's been a great discussion. We look forward to seeing you at CES 2018.
Awesome. Absolutely. We'll
Outstanding.
Be there.
This week's CES Tech Talk is brought to you by GraceNote Sports. GraceNote Sports captures, curates, and delivers in-depth sport data, including live scores, statistics, and play-by-play details for the world's top leagues, teams, and events. GraceNote is now a Nielsen company. Thank you for listening to CES Tech Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can get more information on the CES show in January at ces.tech. Our show is produced by Tina Anthony. John Lindsay is our sound engineer. And me, I'm Jeff Joseph.